Modern.
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 We're prepping for a voyage.
Modern.
The force of an old-fashioned equals whiskey mass times bitters acceleration.
Why don't you make that a double?
Modern bar cart.
What's shaking, cocktail fans? Welcome to episode 139 of the Modern Bar Cart podcast. I'm your host, Modern Bar Cart CEO Eric Kozlik. Thanks for joining me for another fantastic interview episode where we seek out the best and brightest minds in the spirits and cocktail world so that we can share their secrets with you. This time around, I have the opportunity to get to know two awesome bartenders-turned-consultants, Susan Eggett and Alex Maynard. They're the masterminds behind the new beverage program at Sobre Mesa, a brand spanking new Afro-Latino cocktail lounge opening in Oakland, California. Inspired by Chef Nelson German's desire to celebrate his Dominican roots and African heritage with cuisine and beverages that sport a distinctly new world flair. But let's face it, opening any sort of bar or restaurant is a massive undertaking that requires an expert eye for the use of space, people, ingredients, and money. In this conversation with Susan and Alex, we have the chance to really look under the hood and understand what that means. But before we get into all that, let's take a quick pause and give you the chance to make yourself a drink. This episode's featured cocktail is the Bar Resto, which is a signature drink that Susan Eggett developed for past guest Chase Babcock's delicious Saint Benevolence Clarin. To make the Bar Resto, which is a tribute to the many little roadside eateries in Haiti, you'll need 1.5 ounces of Clarin, preferably Saint Benevolence if you can snag a bottle in your area, 3/4 of an ounce of fresh pineapple juice, 1/2 ounce of fresh lime juice, 3/4 of an ounce of fresh celery juice, 1/2 ounce of falernum, which we'll get back to later on in this interview, 1/4 ounce of green chartreuse, 1 small pinch of sea salt, and 1 whole star anise pod. Combine all your liquid ingredients, plus the pinch of salt, in a cocktail shaker with cube ice. Give them a good, hard shake to make sure you really froth that pineapple juice. Then strain into a highball glass over ice and garnish with a mint sprig, a slice of pineapple, and that star anise pod. I got to try the Bar Resto cocktail last year at Tales of the Cocktail, and wow. I'll be honest, I still think about it, which says a lot about both Saint Benevolence Clarin and the brilliant mixological mind of Susan Eggett. Speaking of which, let's get back to the interview. During this conversation with Susan and her bar consulting partner, Alex Maynard, some of the things we discuss include why Susan and Alex both decided to return to their native Oakland after very different careers, and how cocktail culture has evolved in the city over time. How Oakland has developed its own community-centered bar identity separate from the gravitational pull of the San Francisco cocktail scene right across the bay. What it takes to curate a bar program like the one at Sobre Mesa, where the food and drink need to be in a direct conversation with one another. It's not an easy task, but we get into the weeds about how they were able to pull this off. What hiring strategies can be used to build a team capable of opening an ambitious bar and restaurant concept, and how Susan and Alex are utilizing Caribbean ingredients like soursop syrup and jerk seasoning to give guests an experience both completely foreign, but also extremely homey and comforting at the same time. We also chat about the merits of salt in cocktails, the similarities between bar teams and basketball teams, where to grab a drink with Dean Martin, and much, much more. If you've ever wondered what it's like to open a bar or to take a project from concept to reality, then this interview is a must listen. Whether you're in the industry or someone who just appreciates a well-run bar, there are tons of little nuggets of wisdom in this chat that'll help you along with your own future projects or simply allow you to enjoy a drink at your favorite bar all the more. With that, please enjoy this really rich conversation with the stars behind the bar, Susan Eggett and Alex Maynard. Susan and Alex, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you
for having us.
So could you go ahead and just introduce yourselves for our audience? Most of my listeners are on the East Coast, so just tell us who you are and how you got into bartending, I guess would be a good place to start.
Cool. You want to start?
No, you go.
All right, I'll start. My name is Susan Eggett. I have been bartending for about 15 years, but some of my work life has also included summer camps, higher education, animation. So one thing I found about myself is whatever I was doing, I loved kind of helping a team come together and achieve a goal. So currently now I've found myself with really bad knees, and I loved bartending, but my body won't let me do it anymore. And so Alex and I kind of connected over that and wanted to find a way that we could continue to work in this industry, but perhaps it's more in that team building kind of creation realm. So that's kind of been a little bit of my origin story and how I've gotten to where I am right now.
Yeah, great. And what bar are you coming from, or like where's some of your more recent places that you're coming from in San Francisco?
Most recently helped to open a wonderful program called Last Rites. The thing that excited me the most about that program, I have a background in tiki bartending, loving that mid-century formulas of Don Beach and Trader Vic. And Last Rites was doing something different. Their concept was not the religious iconography of indigenous cultures. They wanted to embrace the mixology without kind of taking advantages of cultures that weren't their own. And so I really got excited about that opportunity to take those really beautiful drinks and bring them to San Francisco in a new and different way. So a little bit darker, a little bit less beach, more adventure and jungle. And so that program was really beautiful. Was really proud to be a part of it. Before that, I started bartending in Florida and Puerto Rico, but am an Oakland kid, so this is home. This has always been home, and the opportunity to help create a program in Oakland now has been probably all of those little pieces building to this moment.
Yeah, you seem very energized by it.
Yeah. It's an energizing city. It's a hustling city, and that's something that I identify with.
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, so I've been, I retired from bartending about 2 weeks ago.
Congrats.
Yeah, I think that we could find a study to do because it seems that Susan and my body broke down at exactly the same time. We know this for a fact because we grew up around a corner from each other that we didn't realize until recently.
Maybe it was that corner. Maybe there was something in the water over there.
Seriously, I mean, I'm saying studies should be done. Shoulder for me, but still, very physical job that I've always loved doing, and I think that was part of the draw. I play basketball, and the team aspect of it seemed like a fit. The other options I had, doing nighttime work when you're trying to audition and do the New York City actor thing, it's pretty boring. So I started as a busboy barback, and actually funny tragic story for that person. Mid-shift one night, someone said something they shouldn't have said to me in front of the owner of the bar, and he swapped us on the spot, and that was how I started bartending. It was at 11 on a Friday night, and we were slammed. And so now my barback hates me forever, and I barely have any idea what I'm doing. But the energy level, and just, the people watching, the interaction, I think has always been the main draw for me. I'm a writer, so you get a lot of material with doing this job. So, I mean, I've done dive bar, sports bar, high volume club, like Red Bull vodka style. I've worked in Miami, San Diego, New York, and here back and forth a few times.
Nice.
And yeah, I think it wasn't until there was that shift of the craft bartender being hospitable that came back in style that I was really able to hop back in seriously. Yeah. Until then, I was just all right, this is just how I make my money, But when it was if I know how to make some drinks that you've never heard of, then you're at my whim. I was never a fan of that thing. So
yeah,
glad we got past that. And yeah, I mean, now it seems like I don't know, it's blowing up even more. That I like the way that we still find ways to increase and grow this world is crazy.
Yeah, I agree. And I what I really like is the commonality that you both share with the team aspect, right? The basketball and just the overall emphasis on teams. I love watching basketball. I love how it's a group of people who all have different skill sets, and it's like, you know, I look at a soccer or a football match, and they all kind of look in, you know, there are roles, but they kind of look very similar in terms of body. But then you look at a basketball court, and it's just like, you know, a 7-foot guy, a 5'9" guy pushing the ball forward, or girl, and it's that's why it's one of my favorite sports to watch, because it's a game of mismatches, and it's about finding those puzzle pieces and fitting them in where they work best. And I think for this project that we're here kind of covering as the main part of this interview, I think that fits really nicely. But before we get into this beautiful room that we're in, before we talk about what this program's all about and what it's bringing to the Oakland cocktail scene, you're gonna have to catch me up, because I don't have a whole lot of experience with the West Coast in general, and with Oakland in particular. I've stayed in San Francisco a few times. I've had the luxury of checking out some great bars there, in the tiki space as well. I was a big fan of Zombie Village. I know Doc from judging at ADI, and last night I was actually at this beautiful bar called Wild Hawk. And that's a beautiful place as well. So I've got a bit of a sense, maybe a core sample of the San Francisco scene. Can you both kind of walk us through Oakland and what the cocktail scene has looked like, maybe from when cocktails started getting popular to the current date?
Sure. Yeah.
I think some cities, every city is going to have programs where people really care about what they're doing across the country. Some cities like San Francisco, New York, New Orleans, they're going to have a more concentrated amount of those. Growing up here, I always referred to San Francisco as, I would just say, we're going to the city. And there was always just a little bit of a more polish, if you want to say, because it was like, oh, we're going to the city. And Oakland was always home. And so there was always a little bit more of familialness that that still resonates today. Helping open a program in San Francisco, I noticed it was a little more of a scene, and it felt a little less like a neighborhood. And that's something that Oakland has held on to, and a lot's changing. There's a lot of new businesses, big businesses, a lot of new housing developments coming in, and I part of why I think we're both doing this is we want to hold on to a little bit of that familialness and that neighborhood feeling, that you're creating a community even within the bar. So cocktails, I think, have translated from that. It's always been a little still crafted and still delicious and still thoughtful, and a little less theatrical, if fussy. A little less fussy. And there's a place for it all. But I've always felt like Oakland, there's always been, we're a little more friendly. The sun shines a little bit more, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But there's a level of friendliness and sharing where no one's trying to be better or one up anyone else, and you're all just kind of getting in and having this experience together. So for me, I always enjoyed that environment, and I enjoyed kind of being able to cultivate regulars and create an atmosphere where people can drink for a lot less at home. When we worked on a documentary for Oakland Cocktail Week, we featured the dive bars. And that was what one of those owners said. He goes, you can drink for a lot less at home. He goes, you're coming to a space because you're looking for that connection. And so I think Oakland has always been really good through all of the changes at kind of fostering that. And cocktail-wise, I love that 2 Oakland kids have gone and traveled and then come home, and we've brought all the things we've learned, all the people we've been lucky to work with, and experiences and places and Now we're able to kind of let that trickle out from us, and there's just another level of education just by being who we are and wanting to share that with people. But yeah, there's definitely been a shift, but Oakland has always just felt a little bit more like a neighborhood, like a community.
Alex, what do you think?
I agree. I think I have a theory behind why all of that is, and Oakland has always had this like big city mentality, right? But it's tiny.
You've got your own football team, at least for the time being. Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
But no, it's kind of like my French bulldog. Like, she sometimes will see a huge dog and think that like she could probably take that dog, and like, Phoebe, you can't. But and a lot of times Oakland does win. You know what I mean? Because it's heart, and it's heart unmatched. So there's two byproducts of this kind of big city mentality when you're a small city for me. One is everyone is kind of held in check. It's kind of self-policed because of how small it is. So as soon as something leaves someone's lips, it's down the block, and you can get a reputation that's really bad very quickly. And if you get a bad reputation, no one's going to want to come and sit in front of your bar, which means eventually no one's going to hire you. And in other cities, like Miami, for example, there's a million jobs, and it doesn't matter how you act, because you can get another job tomorrow just from working at another place. Here, we don't have that luxury, also partly because we are just now building this culture, right? It's like you're talking about New York and how they have all of these bars. It's like the amount of one style of bar they have is more than all the bars we have in Oakland. We haven't hit yet the part where we're going to be breaking into like these subcategories of different styles. Like right now, Oakland is stoked to just have this new level of craft where it's legit, people care, the passion is there, the inventiveness is there, and yeah, it's building. Everyone can see it. It's cool.
I like that. I like a lot about that, actually. That's a really cool theory. And what just occurred to me as you were talking about, like, kind of not lagging behind the pack, but like not having to deal with that segmentation, is that I have been gravitating more and more in my life as trying not to be on the bleeding edge of anything, trying not to be the first person through the breach. And that's kind of nice, because the people in San Francisco and like the bigger cities have done a lot of the hard work of opening up certain areas of access when it comes to like what stuff you can serve. Some of the, and certainly on the East Coast, in some places, in some of the older states where there's blue laws, some of the regulations. So it's kind of nice to be able to walk into a situation where you have a lot more possibilities on the table for what you can do. I think that takes some of the competitive pressure off and gives you a little bit more time to be creative, kind of in the way that you were talking about, Susan, of like the bee leaving the hive, going out, landing on a bunch of different flowers, and then coming back with that completely unique pollen pattern and contributing that to the flavor of the honey that the hive makes. I think that's it's a really unique opportunity and a cool space to be in. So let's talk now about this venue that we're sitting in. First thing I thought when I came through the door was like, man, I love this green color. Yeah. What is this space? Who is involved in it, and what's the project?
Cool. Chef Nelson, he is Dominican, grew up in New York, and then got his first restaurant here in Oakland, made that happen. It's Alamar. And so he wanted to create a bar space celebrating his Afro-Dominican roots and creating a cocktail forward program with beautiful bar food to kind of complement that. Yeah. So tapas style food menu. There's a few programs in Oakland, Starline Social Club, Kontiki, that have delicious bar food, and I think we're adding another layer to that where it's a cocktail bar first, and then you're gonna just be blown away by the richness and the beauty of the food. So he approached me, and he wanted support because he is a fantastic chef, doesn't know as much about what happens behind the bar, and he approached me to help kind of curate this program. And then because of our connection and how much fun I had helping with Last Rites, collaborating with a buddy, and then Alex and I were talking about our body ailments, and I said I have to get away from being behind the bar, and I'm really excited to help Chef achieve his vision. And so what he wanted to create, very tropical, very lush, very rich, not a tiki bar, but kind of exploring the rums of the world, the agave-based spirits of the world, the piscos of the world, and then letting people know, like, hey, you can also do these really interesting things with your gins and your whiskeys. And so the idea to help him create that concept was exciting for me. To collaborate with someone that I very much respect in every sense of the word, of the way that he works and the way that he supports a team and crafts cocktails. I was like, that would be really fun for me. So I got involved. I looped my all-star here, and we've just been helping chefs' identity kind of come to life.
Yeah.
And usually when I craft a cocktail, I start with a concept, and then I think about what formula do I know that can execute that concept, and then it's what flavors will be interesting and work well. So I always think backwards. And then I think with this project as well, we were thinking backwards. We were like, okay, this is the overall concept. This is what we want people to feel. And then how do we figure out that in every step? And I think the programs that are successful find those through lines, because when you sit in a place, it feels seamless. The music, the lighting, the cocktails, the food, like if it's been thoughtful, then you are comfortable and you come back. And so I think we've been trying to help Chef achieve his vision, and his palate is fantastic. So thinking of what are those culinary angles we can bring into the cocktail program, and it's been a really fun challenge.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Alex?
I mean, it was a no-brainer for me, obviously. As soon as Susan started talking about it, I think my eyes probably got a little bigger, and then I could see the gears turning, and just like, wait a minute. And I think literally the next day she was like, yeah, so that thing I was talking about, we're doing that. I was like, cool. Consulting, it's not something that so before Starline, about 5 years ago.
And that's, so just to give context for our listeners, I don't think we necessarily introduced it too well.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that and then go back to where you were going.
So about Starline?
Yeah, just give us a sense of what Starline is, what it does.
So we are a community center when we are really doing what we're supposed to do, but we are a restaurant, bar, music venue. And it started because of its destination, or its location. It was kind of considered a destination spot because it's off of the Telegraph Strip. And it was like, oh, I have to walk all the way down this block to get there. But, you know, to be fair, 5 years ago, that block was not the nicest block. It's crazy 5 years later to know, like, this building that's going to open up around the corner is going to be, like, I think the tallest building in Oakland. Yeah. You know, we can't help but kind of feel like we had some part in that, on positive and, you know, kind of remorse, just looking around at what's happened in the community. But Starline was a really interesting project just because it was 3 different bars at once. You know, that's what I had to work with to start. It was figuring out one at a time,
like physically 3 different bars?
Literally 3 different bars. So like there's the main restaurant bar, then there's like kind of the side area, and then there's the ballroom.
That is a lot.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's kind of like learning how to juggle, right? It's like you're just throwing one ball, then you're throwing 2, and then eventually you're just like, I don't know. Sometimes you drop a ball or 2. But it was a lot of fun, and I mean, in all of the consulting projects that I did in San Diego previous to that, I think it kind of helped me get ready for Starline as much as I could. Mm-hmm. Nothing could truly like prepare you for that. But it's, I mean, looking back, it was a really, really fun, interesting time, and it gave me a lot of new tools to work with coming into a lot of situations that are going to come up for us in the future.
Yeah. So that's Starline. Fast forward to this project, which is called, I don't think we've mentioned it yet.
We should
probably name the bar.
Sobre Mesa.
Sobre Mesa.
So in Spanish, it kind of translates to over the table. And in thinking of a sense of the camaraderie, the fun, the silliness that happens after the meal is over. So Chef describes it very beautifully when he says, you know, sometimes before you eat, you're like, oh, you're a little anxious, you're hungry. There's kind of some uneasiness, maybe feeling, and then you've had your meal, you've had a few drinks, and then after the meal, that's when some of these really special moments can happen. Yeah. And so that's kind of, that feeling is at the heart of what he wanted to create. And so a really fun opportunity to kind of create that space where you are having folks come in and feel at home. And so like kind of the ultimate level of hospitality, the ultimate way that we know we're doing our job right is trying to create that sense.
Seems like a very different focus than Starline, right? It seems like a very, lots of eye contact, lots of like, you know, like instead of trying to figure out a synergy, you're trying to kind of isolate what the energy of the place is. How's that been so far?
I mean, I think it's different. It's a different challenge in the pace, right? You know, because like you're saying, the intent, trying to make sure that you're like pinging that chord with each individual guest is much different than kind of this focus game of numbers. You know, it's like, I know that 4 out of 5 people are going to like this, so I can, you know what I mean? Where here it's like, no, every single person, we're going to knock their socks off every time they come in, because that's the level that we know we can achieve with having a controlled space. You know, the way, I won't go too much into it, but the way that Chef kind of has his vision for how the service will flow really dictates kind of that interaction of someone getting a not over-forced but very attentive, detailed experience, which is awesome. Yeah, but very different from what I've been doing.
Most definitely. Yeah, that's, man, I've really enjoyed listening to your stories about this. I'm not a bartender by trade. I've spent time behind bars, like just sort of because I wanted to. But yeah, I kind of get goosebumps listening to you guys talk about it, because it's something that it's like, this sounds like fun. Like
we're gonna make you stay and work a couple shifts with us.
I'm sure it's not nearly as fun as it seems in my head right now, as soon as you have to like get the actual work done. But you know, one thing that I've been thinking about listening to your stories and your backgrounds is, you know, as you've mentioned your collaborations with Chef, you're kind of that cocktail side of things and he's the food side of things. What kind of considerations come into play when you're designing a menu around food? I know, Susan, you touched a little bit about that, but I was wondering if maybe you had some examples of the way that you are planning to have this conversation between the food and the drink. Do either of you have like examples that you can kind of lay out for our listeners and take them through your logic about that?
Well, I think one of the things that impressed me about Chef right off the bat when we started talking about what the drinks could be was he was also conceptual. And so when I would kind of introduce an idea or something I wanted to try, even from as simple as soursop syrup, he was like, oh, that's really prominent in Jamaican cuisine. And so then we went down this Jamaican route and like, can we incorporate jerk spice, and how does that, what would he use for a small bite, and then how could we use that to translate into the cocktail? Are there certain spices that he's working with that then we can use those in the cocktail? Are there tinctures that we can make? So wanting it to really pair well flavor-wise together, and give people super refreshing, delicious options that I always try and achieve two things. I want to kind of blow your mind a little bit. I want to give you flavors that maybe you wouldn't have thought to put together. When Hopscotch opened down the street, they had a cocktail and it had scotch, jalapeno, blackberry, and I would never have thought to put those together, and they did, and it was fantastic. And so I love it when someone offers me something that I wouldn't have thought to put together, but then it also tastes really satisfying and comfortable. So like it's two very different things, but when you're able to hit that sweet spot, I remember there was something I drank after dinner. It was an Italian restaurant, and I had taken my grandmother, and she hates going out for Italian food. She's Italian, and she will do we could have made this better at home. And there's one place where I can take Corso in Berkeley. I can take her there, and she loves it. And they had Vinsanto, which is like a dessert wine, and it's called Vinsanto because there's this story, and I don't even know if this is true, but this is what they were telling me. They'll put the grapes in the rafters of the house because they're closer to God, and so it's a very rich, not too sweet dessert wine, a little bit more on the bitter side. And they served it with a homemade Italian cookie, and they told me to dip the cookie into the wine and eat it. And I'd never had it before, and it tasted like everything I had ever known. And so that's always kind of what I'm chasing, is something that someone has never had, but it will give them that moment, that ratatouille moment of like that familialness of like, this is exactly what I wanted. And I didn't even know that it's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
That was probably a really long answer to what you were asking about.
It's hard. It's a hard to answer question. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here thinking about it before the restaurant. The restaurant would just, or the bar would just open, right? Yeah. Alex, what are your thoughts? Are there any cocktails or projects that you've come up with that you're willing to share as kind of like a preview that you're kind of excited about?
I mean, actually, the cocktail that Susan was mentioning was
the soursop.
Yeah.
What is soursop? I was kind of curious about that.
So
it's tropical fruit. It's kind of with a similar consistency to like a pear or an apple, but kind of in a puree, spiced with allspice, cinnamon, some baking spices. Creates a beautiful viscosity for a cocktail. It's got a great mouthfeel.
Very creamy.
Yeah.
Kind of, adds that real like bold layer. I think just to touch on what Susan was talking about, it's nostalgia is the best ingredient that you can put in a drink. And anytime you can recreate some like a piece of someone's childhood for them in any way, shape, or form in a cocktail that I've felt is a good thing. Well, actually, that's not true. Not the part where people are drinking like Rumplemints or whatever.
No.
Aside from that. But I also think that like that's what I've noticed with Chef is that his inspiration for stuff is all recreating these things from his childhood that were so rich and delicious. It seems like he was like, oh yeah, that reminds me of my mom's this dish, or remember like being young, drinking Brugal and stuff like that. And him feeding us all of that stuff was really helpful in kind of creating these flavors. I think living in New York for me was very helpful. There were not a lot of Dominican, Haitian, Puerto Ricans in Oakland from when I was growing up. I don't know if you knew them, but I didn't know them. Moving to New York, it was all these amazing rich cultures that I was kind of thrown in all of a sudden. It was really cool. So meeting Chef and him falling in love with Oakland was kind of this awesome exchange program. Except we both stayed here. I didn't go back, but hey, they have enough out there anyway.
There you go.
Yeah,
I love that. But it's so interesting, like the way that you're both focusing on home and childhood and comfort. I think we sort of intuitively know that when you walk into a bar or a restaurant, it's a hospitality experience, and you're supposed to be treated, at least in a manner of speaking, as if you are a guest in someone's home. But I think it's another level of the experience to actually be transported there and to feel like you're in your own home, or that the place that you're in somehow belongs to you. I think what that speaks to is having customers, and not just customers, but regulars, as you were saying earlier, regulars as shareholders.
Yeah.
And man, that it makes the task sound even more intimidating, right? Because like when you have shareholders, you're a publicly traded company, which means you're big. So how do you achieve that bigness of scale in a small place? Like I'm just intimidating myself right now.
It works for the Packers.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that.
We've been thinking about this a little bit lately in the interview process, and having people come in, seeing why they wanted to work here. Something that it was very important to both of us and that we had both experienced was finding people, and I revisited a part of The Proper Drink, Robert Simonson's book, where he talks about kind of the Japanese style of cocktail making that is full of intention, and that those intangible things of like the care that you put into what you do translates into the drink. And so what we were looking for when we were interviewing people was that, like, do you care about what you do? Do you want to be doing what you do?
Yeah.
Because I mean, we can create a system that runs smoothly and we can train you in technique, but is that intention there? And so I think building from the inside, that then it can trickle out. So if there is a team of people who really care about what they're doing and really like it and want to be here, that will trickle out and translate to kind of, that's how we're going to be able to achieve this, is if there's a team and they're all in here working alongside each other and they're excited about what they're doing.
Yeah. One more question before we jump into some lightning round questions here. What has been, I'll give you options. What has been either your favorite or least favorite part, or if you don't want to do favorite or least favorite, what has been the most challenging and the most unexpectedly sort of like, oh, that was fun, and that was like easy and it clicked into place? Ooh. You see what I'm trying to ask here?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Or maybe unexpected, you know?
I think for me it was the physicality of the job, right? It's like we're creating 20 plus cocktails. We're also tasting to fill out an entire back bar. It's like you can only get so much done in a day. It's like kind of cramming for SATs or something like that. But I had not really gone into it expecting like how to kind of plan my day around also catching a buzz that, you know, wasn't really expecting.
But you can't really get around it, can you?
There's no way to get around it. No, you're trying to perfect something, you know?
Yeah.
And it's weird, right? Because it's like you're not drinking to party, which I think stopped a little while ago, that people don't do that anymore. You're not sad, and all of these other reasons that people will imbibe. It's literally creating. And yeah, I don't think I'd ever really had that kind of a R&D session where it was all of those that concentrated. You know, when building out menus in other places, it's like a couple of drinks a day, you know?
Mm-hmm. I interviewed Shannon Mustafer, who has a really great tiki book out, and she had a very similar experience where she was like, yeah, there was just a couple of nights where I had to stay at the bar because I was trying to build out this massive program. And yeah, that's I don't know. People, it's like one of those jokes that people make that at this point, like, I'm sure you have to roll your eyes at. They're like, oh, it must be tough going to work to drink.
Exactly. And no, I mean, I'm not in any way like blinded by it. Is fun, absolutely.
Oh, totally.
But it, you know, there are also limits to it, which, even though knowing I hadn't really thought about it in that way, or like we were like the night before, be like, all right, so we're gonna do like these 6 drinks, and then we have so and so coming to taste us on mezcal, and so for like this rum. And then I think Chef has a wine tasting or something like that. It will be fine.
Yeah.
And we were.
Yeah.
And we are.
Yeah.
And I think some of the magic actually comes after that too. That's kind of part of why it's, what did he say? Sorry, there's a football coach named Herm Edwards, and he said that's why you play the game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I found for myself, before I became a bartender, I was so used to and very comfortable in working alone. I knew like things were going to be done the exact way I wanted them to be. I've been watching a lot of the test kitchen editor folks from Bon Appetit, and I love watching their different personalities, and I can see like when someone is like how I used to be a lot, and they're like, no, it has to be done this way, and I've the best joy for me has come in the letting go of that and being able to collaborate and not have to, being able to trust someone and being able to really get excited about their perspective, and like that's been the best part for me. And Chef is so good at what he does, and he's been so generous with how you doing?
You know anybody will be here today working?
We're here. We're
trying to do some of the pre-work before it gets off the ground.
I'm trying to blow it up for a second.
How are you?
How's it going? Eric, nice to meet you. At this point, one of the partners who's helping to open Sobre Mesa dropped by, which reminded Susan of another cool story that kind of shows the power of teamwork when opening a concept.
Fantastic.
And that's, I think that's a great example of just the community aspect that you're building. The bar's not even open yet.
No.
And
that's a story we should share.
What's
The husband and wife team that created Mosswood in Berkeley, they are a barrel finishing program. So they're taking whiskeys and rums and doing different finishings on those spirits and creating some really beautiful stuff. So at Last Rites, they did a special rum blend just for us, and I asked them, I said, hey, Sobre Mesa's coming, I would love it if we could do a similar thing and create a house light rum blend that's just unique for them. And Chef said, oh, my team of investors, they want to do it with us. And I had never, that was part of me having to let go of like, these people they're not bartenders, they're not spirits professionals, they don't know what to taste for, and we're all going to be together and we're all going to taste 6 different rums and we're going to make a blend. And everyone's palate, everyone's like, they were very thoughtful, they were very humble, they were very collaborative amongst each other. And I think we came in super nervous, like, oh gosh, what are we getting ourselves into? And then it was a really, really great experience. And that's part of kind of being open to a team of people who really want to be a part of something and really want to help, and kind of letting something that maybe you didn't plan for come together and be better than you could have worked on.
And another note about the Oakland bar scene, like your average Oakland barfly, the base level of knowledge is so much higher than a lot of other cities I've worked, including New York. People just know their stuff. I don't know.
They seek it out. They seek out what's new. They seek out who's doing something different. They want to learn. They want to engage.
And as a young bartender in the East Bay, you will learn very quickly that fake it till you make it does not work. You will get called out.
Yeah.
Quickly. You got to know your stuff, it's amazing. It just helps raise the bar.
Yeah. Wow. This has been really fantastic. It's so cool to come in and talk to people at this phase. I don't know that I've done too many interviews like this where it's a pre-opening interview and we kind of get to look under the hood, so to speak, and see how things are put together. This has been a real treat for me. Are you ready to do just a couple quick lightning round questions?
Let's go.
What's your favorite cocktail? And if you don't have a favorite cocktail of all time, what's something you've been more recently obsessed with? We'll start with Alex.
It's funny because this was a question that was phrased a different way for our interviewees. For me, it's depending on the day, would be a tie between a pina colada and a Negroni. So I'll say a pina colada with a Campari float.
Ooh.
Yum.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I don't drink cocktails very often.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
You feel like a jungle bird? Is that like a...
Ooh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Like it's in that space a
it's
little bit?
definitely in there, but I like that coconut too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, fair.
Yeah.
I would like, next time I get a pina colada, I'm going to ask for that float.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Bitter Giuseppe. So my grandfather's name is Giuseppe, so I think there's a little love there for me with that cocktail. But I think we're very lucky that one of my favorite bars in the world is Prize Fighter, which is here in Emeryville, and I started drinking that there, and it's bitter, it's a little herbal. I love that it's a stirred cocktail that you pop a little bit of lemon juice in.
Mm-hmm.
Salty.
Yeah, I just love drinking it, and I can have 2 or 3. It's not too boozy, but that's my favorite.
Yeah, that's an underrated move in my opinion of stirring a drink that has a little bit of citrus in it.
Mm-hmm.
Underrated move. I think it needs to happen more.
I feel like it's definitely a home bar go-to. If you're at home, you're like, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
The customer's decided you don't have to shake it.
Yeah.
The customer was me.
Cool. Next question. If you were a cocktail ingredient, what would you be and why?
Falernum.
Ooh.
If you've ever worked in a program with me, you'll know that I put, and it's my tiki background, so I put falernum in a lot of things, but I love it because you can't really taste it, but what I love that it does for me is that it rounds and it brings out other flavors, and that's kind of what's made me happy in the last couple years, was getting to be something that maybe I'm not the loudest or I'm not the tallest, but I like to get good people around me and kind of be a part of this bigger drink. So falernum.
Dude, you are falernum.
I'm falernum.
So
If you were a gin botanical, you'd be orris root.
Yeah.
It's that binder.
Yeah. I'm the glue. Yeah,
Sure.
it's me.
I'd be salt, which it's underrated. People are just starting to find out about it, but then once it's in there, it's like you can't go back to the other thing, you know?
Do you regularly salt cocktails, and if so, how do you do that? Do you have like a
I prefer
salt solution?
pinch.
A pinch?
I prefer the pinch over solution.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like maybe even still getting a little bit of that grittiness in there is fun for me, but solution's fine too. But you gotta have the saline.
We have this cocktail bitters that we make, my company makes, and it's Japanese bitters, and it's got a little bit of seaweed in there. It's got real wasabi from Oregon. We get it shipped from the Oregon coast from the farmer, and just that little. I use it like almost like a combination between a saline solution and a celery bitters. Ooh. And it's like that little solution. Bloody Marys and Dirty Martinis, as you'd expect, but I actually really love it in a Manhattan because, you know, if you ever had those like Japanese whiskeys, they're in that interesting space between scotches and ryes. They're a little bit more restrained, but I love adding the Japanese bitters to a Japanese whiskey Manhattan because it just pulls some of those beautiful fruity floral notes in the same way that like the salt in the caramel pulls out some of those desserty notes. So I love salt too. I think salt, vegetables should be in way more cocktails than they are. That's my hot take.
Yeah.
All right, here's the Widowmaker question. Cocktail with anybody, past or present, who would it be? Where would you go? What would you drink? Just paint a picture for our listeners.
Me? It would be my dad. So my dad, Robert Maynard, actually to date is still the only black person to ever own a major city newspaper. He and my mom ran the Oakland Tribune for the 80s. So I grew up in a newspaper family. I think that the bar used to be Twitter, kind of, you know, like the reporters would go to the bars to get the scoops. Like that's where they would meet their contacts, whoever. And so I think in a way that the barfly thing has always been a part of my family just as much as the writing aspect of it. But my dad passed when I was 13, and he was first generation, I'm second generation from Barbados. He was a big Scotch guy, and now with my love for mezcal, I'd be really cool for him to try mezcal. And you know, we went to Barbados when I was 10, 1990. Found like some of our relatives, my 106-year-old great aunt or something like that. It would be cool to go back there and with, you know, family and actually do the rum tour that way.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah,
cool. That's amazing.
I love it. For me, growing up, my mom I was with my mom a lot, and so then I was with my grandparents a lot. So I liked the things that they liked, and I didn't really know what was popular culture for kids. And so Dean Martin, Las Vegas, at the Sands, after a show, late 60s, he would do this bit where he would push a bar cart on stage, and he'd be like, anyone want to mix up a little sandwich? And so one of my favorite drinks that I've ever made, I named the lunch cart, kind of in tribute to the Rat Pack, and that kind of, for me, I see old photos of my grandparents, and I see kind of that golden age of like going out to a cocktail bar and dressing up and having it be something really special for people. So I would, and then there's just so much fun. He's such a joyful person, and to be able to sit down with him after a show and talk about it in an almost empty bar where you're just able to,
just enough people there to make it not awkward. Yeah.
But get to chat with him after a show.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Couple more questions here. What's a common or traditional cocktail ingredient that you've never had, and why? My example is amaretto. Never had it. So
for me, it was funny. I worked an event last night, and there was a floral element in a cocktail, and it was I'm very floral sensitive, but Parfait Amore is something that I've seen people use, and it's super floral. And I think for me that's something I've never tried, because I usually kind of I'm much more in the citrusy world, savory world. So for me, floral notes are maybe I don't know, but Parfait Amore, because I was like, ugh, it's very floral.
I have never had a Gibson because of the pearl onion. I remember setting up bars in New York, and I worked at this place for 2 years, and I never saw anyone eat one of those onions, and I put them back and forth every day, and I was like, okay, no. I've since had some people, you know, actually make their own kind of
they'll pickle the onion.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's
I also have never had a Gibson. But yeah, I agree. It's got to be like, if someone were to say like, hey, we got this Gibson on the menu, made the onions myself, you know, over the weekend, I'd be like, yes, please.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, last question here. What's an unusual or controversial view that you hold in the spirits and cocktail space?
I think for me, getting a little bit back to the intention, I was thinking about it before I had read that book and kind of understood the Japanese philosophy, because there was a rock star bartender from Trader Vic's, and she and I were training people together at Forbidden Island in Alameda, and we were training people, and I was watching them make the drink, and they were doing it exactly as I had asked them to do, and it just didn't quite taste right. And so I don't know if it's controversial anymore, because I think people are very much on board with intention and the love that you put into something. It is intangible, but it can be felt and it can be sensed. So I think for me, that was something that I couldn't quite describe, but it was something I had experienced. And I think now maybe people are definitely talking about it and creating spaces where intention does matter. But that would probably be for me.
More top-down mixology?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. In a similar house, details, I think, is the umbrella way to put it. I was going to say dilution rates, and how many times I've had younger bartenders like try to put a tin hat on me because of just like clocking people's like wash lines, you know, but that and a bunch of other things all make up the cocktail, you know, like you're a cocktail only tastes as good as the service that led up to you getting that cocktail. You know, if I'm a jerk to you all the way up to giving you this amazing pina colada with the Campari float, it's not gonna taste that good.
No, it won't. No.
So I've gotten into it with people for, I mean, I guess more recently being in more of a leadership role and that being my job to call people out for stuff like that, where before I probably would just be like, maybe I'd tell them, maybe I wouldn't, depending on our relationship, but details for sure.
Yeah. I did a whole little mini like audio essay on wash lines, just as like it came about from me having a terrible Sazerac, and I saw it coming and
all the way to the top.
No, it was in a giant, like everything about it was wrong.
Yeah.
Like it was made like around the corner from me. I couldn't see it getting made. There's all this stuff. For listeners, if you want to go back and listen to that, it's called Mind Your Wash Lines, maybe 10 or 20 episodes ago. But yeah, I could see that drink coming, and I was throwing shade at it before it even got placed down in front of me.
Yep.
So no, I agree. Part of the reason why I do this question is so it's like a little therapy session. It's like, no, that's a good thing. That's a great belief. You keep on believing that. You're not the only one.
No.
Wow. Susan and Alex, this has been tremendous. I'd like to wrap this up by having you share how to best digitally connect with you individually, and then also please definitely share info about this space, potentially when it might be open, and how to find and attend Sobre Mesa and try some of the awesome small plates and cocktails.
Great. Yeah, so if everything continues to go as it's going, is going well, on schedule, we will be open at the beginning of March. So we are on Franklin Street near the corner of Franklin and 17th, downtown Oakland. Sobre Mesa Oak on Instagram. I have a very silly Instagram. It's Hobotiki, Hobotiki.
One of the stronger usernames I've come across.
I used to have to wear a lot of aloha wear, and I would always be cold, and so I would wear a hoodie and like jeans underneath, and so people would look at me. They're like, "You look like a hobo. It's a tiki hobo, but it's a hobo." And I was like, this was before Instagram, and so if I ever have a thing, that'll be my name. And then Instagram came out. I'm like, well, I got a name. And so that's me.
I love it.
Yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest way to find me too. I am at Ricky Pretenderson.
Wow.
Greatest of all time.
Yeah. Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed sitting down and digging into this. I love the way that you're both approaching this from like a really grounded and intentional direction, and I just even the spirits that are sitting on the bar behind us that have been sourced so intentionally, which is a story for another day. I can say without any hesitation that next time I'm in the Bay Area, I'm going to be walking through that door, and I hope that it's the same color green as it is right now.
Oh yeah,
definitely. Go A's.
So Alex and Susan, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us again.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, there's two big things you can do for us here at Modern Bar Cart. One would be to tell your friends and family if you think they'd enjoy listening to us talk about cocktails. And if they don't download podcasts, they can always stream our episodes on their desktop directly from the show notes page at modernbarcart.com. The other thing you can do to help would be to head on over to iTunes or wherever you download your podcasts and leave us a review. 5 stars are great, but we're more interested in your feedback. And the beauty is, the more reviews we have, the easier it will be for other folks out there to learn about our show. We're trying to start a cocktail revolution here, and by spreading the word, you're helping us fight the good fight. You can always reach us by emailing podcast@modernbarcart.com if you're looking for cocktail or bartending advice, or if you're a pro who would like to pull up a mic and be interviewed for all to hear. Also, definitely follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Modern Bar Cart for cocktail porn, recipes, and entertaining tips. And keep an eye out for new product releases and special offers, which are happening all the time. We love our listeners, and we really enjoy giving you exclusive discounts and sneak peeks at our latest and greatest cocktail projects. This episode may be over, but for you, the mixological fun and adventures are just beginning, so remember, folks, drink responsibly and experiment boldly. This episode was made possible with editing and production assistance by Samantha Reed, bar consulting, spirits, and cocktail insights courtesy of Susan Eggett and Alex Maynard, and a little bit of interview magic by yours truly. This has been a Modern Bar Cart production, copyright 2020.